Well, good morning. Oh, this is going to be exciting. So my mic has a 50-50% chance of working this morning, so that's exciting. And I just want to go ahead and tell you right away, we're gonna own what is happening in this room. Is anybody a little toasty? Yeah. So this is just an invitation for you to come back next week when we get a new blower. Because right now, when there's cold air, it's just not coming at you. It's there. It's in the ceiling. The ceiling rats are very, very comfortable right now. So you're not going to offend me if you take that bulletin you got when you walked in today and just start fanning. If you wouldn't mind, tip it toward me just a little bit, though, so I can have some too. That would be great. It's not fair that I have to go after worship because I've already done my workout for the day. So I'm glad that you guys are here today. My name is Kayla Hurst. I'm one of the pastors here at Northgate, where we envision transforming our homes, communities, and world by pursuing God, building community, and I don't think I can do this. Do I sound like I'm on a radio? Yeah, okay, this is going to be good. All right. So this one? Yeah? Yeah. Say that now. Okay, I'm going to I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, great. So that's already heavy. All right. This is going to be great. Okay, so last week we started a brand new series called People in Process. And People in Process is one of our values here at Northgate. In fact, you can see it right over there on one of our banners. And People in Process, both the sermon and our value, is all about recognizing that we are a people in process. None of us have made it yet. None of us are perfect. None of us have gotten all the way to the end. We are all in process. And what we value is by engaging in our own journey and also acknowledging and appreciating that the person that you're sitting right next to, they're in the middle of the process too. And they haven't made it yet either. So the middle of the process can be kind of messy. I mean, the middle of almost any process gets a little messy. I don't know if any of you have ever cleaned your house. When I clean my house, hopefully you've cleaned your house like ever. When I clean my house, I tend to make more of a mess before it gets better. My husband makes fun of me because I am a piler. So when everything's really messy, I just like to make more piles. And he'll walk in halfway through the process and be like, this is worse. Now there's just little mountains everywhere in the house, and I have no idea what they're for. And he'll try to help, and it'll get disastrous, right? The middle of the process can be really, really messy. In fact, last week we ended with a challenge that said, this week, while we were walking through our lives, when we saw somebody that was a mess, actually we said, when we see somebody who's a hot mess, we'll look at them, and instead of judging, instead of being critical like we so often are in our heads, instead, we would say, I can tell you're a mess because it takes one to know one. I know you're a mess because I am too. Was anybody able to do that? Please tell me you didn't do it out loud. Really awkward for that person. And we make a real mess of things, whether it's financially, relationally, professionally. However we do it, we make a mess of our lives at times. And we excuse ourselves by saying, well, nobody's perfect, right? We always have nobody's perfect. But what we talked about last week is that when we're saying that, when we say, well, nobody's perfect and we're excusing ourselves, we're actually also saying something that's really important. We're saying that there is a perfect that nobody is. And so when we are ready to acknowledge that nobody is perfect, we are just steps away from acknowledging that God is. God is the perfect that nobody is. God is the perfect standard that we have to live up to. Not the person next to us. It doesn't do us any good to be better than or not as bad as. When we are up against the perfect that nobody is, Jesus Christ, we all know where we are, and it brings us together. But that mess also, not only does it bring us together, it also draws us near to God. Our mess draws us near to God. And that's the opposite of how we feel about it so many times, right? When I feel messy, when I'm right in the middle of disaster, that's not when I think, yes, this is when I feel most like I'm close to God. No, I feel like it's taking me away from him. But today we're going to talk about what it really is like when God comes near. Now, I was watching some videos, using my time wisely this week, watching some videos on YouTube, and I noticed these videos, and I want to share just a few with you this morning. But I've noticed that whenever you realize you're a mess, different people have different reactions, right? We all have different ways of dealing with recognizing we're a mess. And here's some possible reactions.
What happened while I was gone today? What happened? Are you going to back out of here again? Where are you going? What happened while I was gone today? Where are you going?
Did you do this? You think Daddy's gonna protect you?
I mean, I'm not saying we're all dogs, but I am saying we have some similar reactions, right? When we notice the mess that we are, we have different reactions, but I think that last dog might have something. He might be onto something. Yes, we do think our Father might protect us. So often, the world and even we think of God as something like a spy, judge, executioner all in one. As if he's just roaming around hoping to catch us in our mess, hoping to be the person who can condemn and punish us. And I'm not sure where we got that idea, but it wasn't from Jesus. In the Gospel of John, there's a story recorded of Jesus, and this is one that's going to get good with me. Hold the mic. All right. John chapter 8 is where we're going to be today. John is in the New Testament. It was written by a man named, you guessed it, John. And he tells the story of Jesus while he's on the earth. So John chapter 8, starting in verse 2, it says, "At dawn, Jesus, appeared again in the temple courts where all the people gathered around him. And he sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group. She was caught in adultery. And at the risk of being earthy, because it is important for you to understand the scene here, this woman was caught in adultery. Now, I have a few questions about this. One, how exactly did they catch her? Did they let her get dressed before they dragged her into the temple courts? Or was she just standing there? Was she able to take a moment, and where was the man? Why didn't they bring him along for this humiliation? Moving on, verse 4. "And they said to Jesus, 'Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such a woman. Now what do you say?' They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. So the law said that the punishment for what she did was death by stoning. The Pharisees had already humiliated this woman, and they were trying to humiliate Jesus. You see, he could either follow the law and join them as judge, jury, and executioner, or they'd publicly accuse him of breaking the law, something that a good rabbi would never do. But instead of responding, Jesus just bent down and started writing in the dirt with his finger. And the woman, who was dragged into the middle of what must have been a stunned crowd. Basically, they showed up for morning Sunday school with Jesus, and they had this woman dragged in the middle of their group. And she just stood there. Humiliated or not, she knew that what she had done was against the law, and she would have been aware of what the law said about the consequences for what she did. And now we can imagine her a disheveled mess, stunned and terrified, waiting for this teacher to let the gavel drop. But instead, he's writing in the dirt with his finger. Now, the Bible doesn't say what he was writing, and I have a few guesses. And I really can't wait to get to heaven and have Jesus tell me what you're writing. What were you writing? You know, when I was little and I would come to church, or I'd have to go to a meeting with my mom, and I was supposed to be quiet. I don't know if you can imagine this, but it's very hard for me to be quiet. And I would sit right next to my mom, and when I would run out of paper to draw on, she would play this game with me. And I would hold out my hand, and she would take her finger and she would write in my hand. And I would have to guess what it was that she was writing. But it wasn't much of a guessing game, because the first thing that she always wrote was she would put I, and then she'd draw a heart, and then a U. I love you. So I always got the first one right. I think that's why she did it. This is our own secret message. It was our own way to communicate. I love you. I know I'm trying to tell you to be quiet, but I love you. It was our own little secret message. And I'll be honest, sometimes I picture Jesus in that scene. With the woman standing there, my guess is that she's not trying to make eye contact with anybody. She's got her eyes down, just dripping with shame. And it makes me wonder, when Jesus bent down and wrote in the dirt, did he write her that same secret message? Did he write, I love you? We won't know. We won't know. But the Pharisees, they were not having any of it, and they were not looking at what he was writing in the dirt. So instead, they kept pushing him and prodding him, and they have no patience for any of this nonsense. In verse 7, it says, when they kept on questioning him, Jesus straightened up and said to them, let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. And then he stooped back down and wrote in the dirt. I love this part of Jesus. Cool, calm, and collected he was. In the midst of anything but cool, calm, and collected. Everyone would have been in chaos. No one would have known what was going on. Everybody would have been uncomfortable. He receives until they prod him and prod him and prod him, and then he just stands up and calmly says, okay, whichever one of you hasn't sinned, you go right ahead. But I'm going to write in the dirt. Now I have a different guess for this one. When he stooped down in the dirt that time, this one isn't as precious. I think he might have drawn a chart. And in the first column, it had all the Pharisees' names. And in the second column, he just started writing down their sins right next to him. And I think that because this next verse, it says, at this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left with the woman still standing there. And then Jesus straightens up, and again he says, look, calls to the woman this time, woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? And this we hear her speak the only time. No one, sir, she said. Then neither do I condemn you, Jesus declared. Go and leave your life of sin. They're not here, but I am. And I see you. I see you in the middle of this mess, but neither do I condemn you. Go now. Leave your life of sin. I see you. I love you. I won't condemn you. Look at me. Look at me. I don't condemn you. You know, right a few chapters earlier in that same book in John, one of the most famous scriptures that so many people memorize as their very first one is John 3:16, right? For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. But keep reading. Because in verse 17 it says, for God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Look at me. I won't condemn you, says Jesus. Again and again and again, Jesus showed himself to us. Jesus showed us how God deals with messy people. Zacchaeus, do you remember him? The wee little man was he? He climbed up in the sycamore tree. Am I the only one that knew that song? Okay, I was really hoping for a all of a sudden singing choir. So Zacchaeus, he was a dishonest tax collector. This man was in the middle of his mess. He made his fortune on the backs of his friends and neighbors by overtaxing them. He would overtax them, and then he would keep all the money for himself. He was a despised man. He didn't have anyone. He had made a complete mess of his life. And frankly, I would guess he also despised himself. But then he heard that Jesus was coming. And it's interesting to me that he climbed up in a tree so that he could see Jesus. I'm not sure that he wanted Jesus to see him, but he wanted to see Jesus. But Jesus saw him. And he said, come down to me. I want to go to your house today. And I imagine that dinner table. I imagine Jesus talking to Zacchaeus and going, oh, I love you. And Zacchaeus is like, nobody has said that in a really long time. Nobody wants to come to my house for dinner. I'm feared at best, but despised most of the time. And Jesus says, I don't despise you. Invite me over for dinner. I'm in. And then Jesus talks to him about how his life can change. And so Zacchaeus does. He changes his life, and Jesus says, salvation has come to this house today. Salvation has come to this house today. Now notice he didn't look up at Zacchaeus in the tree and go, hey, will you promise to give back everything you owe people? Because then I'd like to go to dinner. No, he said, I see you right there hiding in the tree. I see you right now. I want to go to your house now. And then his life changed. So we have the woman, we have Zacchaeus, and then we have the Samaritan woman. Jesus was walking through with his disciples, and he took the shortcut. He went through Samaria, somewhere that he would never go as a good Jewish man. He wouldn't go there. The Samaritans were dirty to them. And he sent his disciples on to go get something to eat, and he sat by the well, and it was the middle of the day. Nobody wanted to go to the well in the middle of the day. It was too hot. And a woman came, but she came by herself, which was odd because just like we go to the bathroom together, the women went to the well together. They always traveled in packs, but she was by herself, and she was by herself in the middle of the day. So there's already a hint to us that this woman, she didn't have community. She was not a welcome part of that community. But Jesus said, hey, come here. Will you draw me some water? And I can only imagine what that woman thought. There's a few things wrong with this. 1, you are a man. I am a woman. We do not talk. 2, I am a Samaritan and you are a Jew. We do not talk. What are you doing? But she says, no, come on. Will you draw me some water? And so they start this conversation. They talk more and more, and it becomes very clear very quickly that Jesus knows more than just that maybe she doesn't have a lot of friends with her that day. Jesus says, I know that you've been married many times before, and the man that you're living with right now isn't even your husband. I can imagine that the heat rose from her toes all the way up through her neck. How do you know that? How do you know that? And why are you still talking to me? If this is how that is, if you know who I am, and you clearly are a man of God, if you can know all of that, then why would you talk to me? And then Jesus offers her living water. He says, no, I see you. I see you, but come near to me. Come near to me, and I'll give you living water. She was broken. She was hurting. She had tried many times to have men fulfill her needs. But Jesus said, you can be done with that now. I will fulfill this need for you. I will. So look at me. I won't condemn you. Come down to me. I'm going to your house. Come close to me. I'll give you what you need. And then there was the thief on the cross. You know, there were 2 thieves that were crucified the same day Jesus was. And these were men whose only purpose in life at this point was to die to show the world what not to be like. This was the most hopeless of messes that you could get yourself into. And Jesus is crucified right between those 2. But one of them reached out to Jesus and he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus, knowing the mess, the fairly obvious mess that this man was in, what was his response? Today you will be with me in paradise. You will be with me. I see you in your mess, but today you will be with me in paradise. See, Jesus reveals to us a God who sees us, who loves us, who forgives us, who doesn't condemn us for our messes, but uses our messes to draw us near to him. The woman caught in adultery, look at me. The dishonest tax collector, come down to me. The woman at the well, come close to me. And the thief on the cross, you will be with me. They all needed something better than the mess that they were in. And in every case, Jesus offered them the better. What was it? Himself. The only better that we can get, the messes that we're in, is Jesus himself. And so when we come to acknowledge the mess that we are, the messes that we've made, Jesus says, I see that mess, and I raise you a Jesus. Come close to me. This is how we fix this mess. I saw this going around on Facebook. It said that religion says, I messed up, my dad is going to kill me. But relationship, Jesus says, I messed up, I got to call my dad. Do you hear the difference? Yeah. We know that there is a Father, but some of us are walking around in our faith, or maybe even resisting faith, because we think, oh, no, I'm sure there's a God and he won't like me. You don't know what mess I am. You don't know. And if he knows, I know he doesn't want me. But the God that we love, the God that we serve, the Jesus that revealed him to us says, no, come to me. Jesus still invites messy people to follow him while they are still messy. He doesn't say clean up first and then come along. No, he says, I see you. Come close to me. Come follow me. Now, right after that passage that we talked about in John 8 with the woman caught in adultery, the very next passage in verse 12 says, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And I think that's so interesting, right? That's how I feel when I'm in the middle of the mess, stumbling around, no hope of making bigger messes, honestly. Most of the time when I'm in a mess, I just make more and more and more messes, trying to fix it. And that's what happens in the dark. Because the only way to get out of the dark is to find someone that has more light than you. And Jesus is saying right here, I am that light. Walk with me, and we'll get out of this together. Walk with me, and we'll get out of the darkness. But that's not what we want. Not usually. When we find ourselves in a mess, we want the easy button. We want to turn on the bat signal. We want to call AAA and say, big truck, come fix it. And then we shake their hands, we sign the paper, we say, call you next time. But Jesus says, no, that's not how we're going to do this. And it doesn't work that way in life. It just doesn't. Can God do that? Of course he can. But he loves us too much to do that. His goal isn't to clean us up and fix our messes. That's not the goal of a father. No, his goal is relationship. Relationship matters more than behavior. If you think about it as a parent, I would so much prefer an imperfect child who loves me than a perfect child who wants nothing to do with me. God is the same way. He wants imperfect children, which is good because that's all he's got. Imperfect children who love him and run to him and want to be with him more than the perfect children who want nothing to do with him. That's the God of the Bible. Behavior matters, but relationship matters so much more. And there's even a practical reason why. If there are any parents out there, you know that if you constantly clean up your kids' messes, they'll just make the same mess, right? If we swoop in and fix it for our kids all the time, they'll just keep doing the same thing over and over and over. They'll never move out of our basements. God knows that the way that we grow is by walking with us, not snapping his fingers, cleaning up the mess that we are, and moving on. God wants us to have a deep relationship with Jesus. He is our light. He's our way out of the darkness. And Jesus came not to fix our messes, but draw close to us. And if it's our messes that open the door, then our mess is worth it. If it wasn't for the messes we have, or make, or are, then I don't know that we would have ever drawn close to Jesus. I know that is my story and the story of so many. There's a pattern that I see a lot, and maybe you'll recognize this one. I have a sneaky suspicion you will. It goes, I messed up, I gave up, I looked up, God showed up. Have any of you had that pattern in your life? You messed up, and then you were like, okay, I gave up, I give up, I can't do this. You look up finally, because there's nowhere else to look. And then God showed up. This is the pattern of so many of us. In fact, I would guess that it's the pattern for everyone in here who has already given their life to Christ. This is our story. We aren't perfect people who have never messed up. We are a people in process. Every week we say there's nothing so dead that God cannot resurrect it. There's nothing so broken that he cannot mend it. And there's nothing so lost that he cannot find it. And I assure you, you're not the first exception today. There's nothing so far from God that he won't draw near to you. If you want to be found alive and mended, we would love to walk with you along that journey. Maybe you find yourself and you're just started at the I messed up part. You haven't even gotten to the giving up part. You're still going to work at it for a while. Good luck. I'm so excited for nope, it's not going to happen. Get to the place where you're ready to give up and then look up. I assure you, every single time God will show up. Every time. And so if you want someone to walk alongside you, we would love to be your people. You won't find us to be perfect. You will find us all to have done this same thing. We're a bunch of messes that are walking with the hand of the Savior out of the darkness. That's who we are. We're a people in process. So if you want to join us in that process, we have a special gift for you today. It's a book called This Changes Everything, because it does. And it has an attachment. Right here, you have 21 days to start your relationship with Jesus. Or maybe it's just 21 days to see if he really is what we're saying he is. So if you're not ready, if you're at the give up part, but you're looking for something, we invite you to be a part of this. Try looking up. Because we know that looking up really does change everything, and God will show up every time. And for those of us that are already following Jesus, this has a great impact on how we see the world. We said last week that we're all messes, that we're all people in process, that no matter where we are, we need to shut off that critical spot, right? We need to shut off that critical voice and go, I only know you're a mess because I'm one. And maybe this week, it's time for us to take one baby step toward the messes that God has put in our lives. The other messy people that he's surrounded us with. The ones that are in process as well. Is it time for you to link arms with someone? To say, okay, let's walk together. We can do this together. Maybe it's time for you to try out confident living. Maybe it's time for you to go over and get a This Changes Everything for somebody that you know. Whatever your next step is today, I hope that you'll be brave enough to take it. I hope that you'll step into this community of people in process, knowing that we serve a God who loves us, who won't condemn us, but sees every part and loves us anyway. Will you stand with me as we close today? Maybe you're just at the beginning of this process, and listen, I know that in a room this size, some of you may have actually gotten to the part where you give up just today. And we have a team of people that would love to pray with you, of prayer partners that will be down near the stage at the front. If it's been a horrible week and you just want somebody to hold you up in prayer today, please come down after service. We'd love to partner with you with that. If it has been the best week ever and you want to celebrate with somebody and say, Jesus, thank you, we'd love to partner with you in that. We'd love to do it. Maybe it's time for you to share your story. Maybe you've done this. You've messed up, you gave up, you looked up, and God showed up, and it was such a beautiful story that you can't help but share it with the world. I talked to 2 people last week that had miracles happen in their life. Please come tell us about your story. We want to share that. as an encouragement to others who may be a little bit further back in that process, who are waiting for God to show up because they haven't quite given up yet. So we invite you to do that. And just like we do every week, if you would you put your hands out like this? We leave you with a blessing every week. May you walk through this week knowing God's grace in a way that you haven't before. May you see the world with his grace-colored eyes, see his people in a new light, and walk together to the light because you are standing with him. Thank you, guys. I love you. I'll see you next week.
这是看美国学英语频道刚开始启动的打赏功能啊，这个是 PayPal 打赏，通过它呢可以扫描打赏，然后或者是也可以用 PayPal 这个打赏的链接 PayPal.me 就是我的意思，有个斜杠，看美国学英语这几个字的首字母 KMGXYY。然后这是微信打赏的二维码啊，扫码就可以支付。打赏的目的呢有2个，一个是打赏之后呢可以直接通过视频呢解答朋友们关于移民呀、关于美国这边的一些问题。第2个呢也是这边增加一些收入，这样呢可以能够让自己平时在公司工作的时间能少一点，这样可以做出更多更好的视频。也请朋友们理解。